Which states have shifted the most on a presidential level between 2008 and 2020? Today on Political Excess, we're going to go through each state and take a look at the shifts. I've already done this for some other years. The last one I did was 2004 to 2020. That was a bad shift for the Republicans. This time it's going to be much worse for the Democrats. But I'd like to just take a look at different presidential years and compare the data that I have. I'm sure this is available on other sites, but I made my own spreadsheet. So let's get into this. At the first column here we have the states. The next column is the 2008 Democratic vote, followed by the 2008 Republican vote. Then we have the 2020 Democratic vote, followed by the 2020 Republican vote. Then the Democratic shifts between those 2 years and the Republican shifts between those 2 years. And finally, the net change between those two shifts. So this is just to satisfy some curiosity, because sometimes we forget how states were voting even just 10 or 15 years ago. And 2008 was probably the high point for Democrats. Barack Obama won his first term. He was the new thing, coming in after George Bush, who had low approval ratings. And this was probably the beginning of any modern political shifts or even realignments. So let's get started here in Alabama. In 2008, the Democrats, Barack Obama, got 38.7% of the vote. The Republican candidate, John McCain, got 60.3%. In 2020, the Democrat, Joe Biden, got 36.6%. And the Republican in 2020, Donald Trump, got 62%. That's a net shift of minus 2.1 for the Democrats, plus 1.7 for the Republicans. And that is a net change of 3.8% in favor of the Republicans. And also in this last column, I do have the shading. The dark red and the dark blue are over 10-point shifts. The light red and light blue are under 5-point shifts. So with all that said, we can go quickly through the rest of this. The next state is Alaska. That went 11.5 points toward the Democrats. That is a big shift away from the GOP. Next state in Arizona, that also had a big shift toward the Democrats of 8.8%. Next in Arkansas, that had a good shift toward the GOP by 7.8%. California, it's already a blue state, but it went 5.2 toward the Democrats. Colorado, that was the beginning of Colorado being a modern blue state, and it still went 4.5 points more to the left during those 12 years. Next to Connecticut, that actually went 2.4% toward the Republicans. Not a lot of change, but it got a little bit redder from its high blue point in 2008. Next in Delaware, that went 6.1 toward the Republicans. It's a little bit surprising, perhaps. It's still not a competitive state, but it did get a lot less blue. Next in Florida, Barack Obama won that in 2008, but since then it has shifted 6.1 toward the Republicans. Georgia, that's becoming a blue state, and we see that reflected here. It got 5.5 points more blue since 2008. Next state, Hawaii, Barack Obama was born there, and that was a big blue state in 2008. Since then it went hard toward the right, 15.9 points. Still not really all that competitive, as Trump only got 34% in 2020. Next in Idaho, that went 5.5 points toward the Republicans. Illinois, that is where Barack Obama was a U.S. Senator from, and that went 8.2% toward the Republicans. Indiana, Barack Obama actually nearly won that in 2008. A lot of you might remember that. Since then, though, they want nothing to do with the Democrats, and it went 17.2% toward the Republicans. Iowa as well, that also went for Barack Obama by a decent margin in 2008, but in 2020, it went 17.7 points toward the right. Next in Kansas, that had almost no net change, 0.2% toward the Democrats. The next state is Kentucky, and that went a healthy 9.3% toward the Republicans. Next in Louisiana, very similar margins, only 0.2 toward the Democrats. Next in Maine, that went 8.2 toward the Republicans. Maryland, that's a blue state. It got 7.8% bluer. Massachusetts, similar margin. That also went 7.7% toward the left. Michigan, that went huge for Barack Obama in 2008, over 57% of the vote. Comparing that to 2020, it's 13.6% redder. Next in Minnesota, Minnesota actually voted to the right of Michigan in 2008. But since then, in 2020, Minnesota got 3.2% more friendly toward the Republicans. Next in Mississippi, similar shift there, 3.3 toward the Republicans. Missouri, that was a very close state, 2008, narrowly going for the Republicans. Since then, it's went hard toward the right by 15.2%. Montana, also a close state in 2008, but it shifted 13.9 toward the Republicans. Nebraska went a modest 4.2% toward the Republicans. How about in Nevada? Well, in 2008, Barack Obama got 55% of the vote. That is more than some of these other states we would think would be even bluer. But since then, it went 10.1% toward the Republicans. Next in New Hampshire, which actually voted to the right of Nevada, that got 2.4% more favorable for the Republicans. New Jersey, almost no change there, 0.4 of a point toward the Democrats. New Mexico, that went to the right by 4.3%. New York, that went to the right as well by 3.7%. North Carolina, not a big change, 1.6 toward the Republicans. In North Dakota, that's a red state, but that went deep red by 24.6%. Ohio, Barack Obama won that state as well in 2008. Since then, big shift away from the Democrats by 12.7%. Oklahoma, mild 1.8 toward the Republicans. In Oregon, that had almost no net change, a very mild 0.3 toward the Republicans. Pennsylvania, that had a nice 9.1% shift toward the Republicans. Rhode Island, that's another state we'd think of as very blue, but that went 7% toward the Republicans. South Carolina, mild 2.7 toward the Republicans. South Dakota, another big lurch toward the right by 17.6. Tennessee, that went 8.1% toward the GOP. Texas, we know that's gotten bluer, and we see 6.2% toward the Democrats. Utah as well, that had a shift toward the Democrats by 7.6. In Vermont, that went 1.6 toward the Republicans. Virginia went 3.8 toward the Democrats. Washington State went 2.2 toward the Democrats. And West Virginia, that had the biggest change of all, 25.8% toward the Republicans. Wisconsin, Barack Obama won that by a huge margin in 2008, 56-42. In 2020, that shifted 13.2 toward the Republicans. And the last state is Wyoming. It was already a red state, and it got 11 points redder in 2020. And those are all the states. And we could take this one step further and take all this data and apply it to a map to help visualize the shifts. And here it is. It's the same basic shading. The darkest colors are over 10-point shifts, all the way down to the very lightest colors. Those are under a 1-point shift. So there's 4 tiers of shading, so you could help visualize where the greatest shifts are. And every election is going to have its nuance and its specifics. This one had a strong Democratic candidate and a relatively weak Republican candidate, and the vote really wasn't all that close. So it's going to make sense that a lot of these states have shifted away from the Democrats from their high point here in 2008. So it does not look all that favorable for the Democrats, although there are some high points here. Texas, Arizona, Georgia, those are the key states the Democrats have been gaining in. Some of these other shifts have shifted in one direction or the other, but most of the times the states are still not really all that competitive. It's all about if these trends keep going and how far they shift. So Republicans clearly did great here in the Midwest, the Rust Belt, even in the Northeast. But I still don't think there's a whole lot to take away from this. This is more of just something fun to see where the shifts are. Going forward, Republicans are going to have to do a little bit better in a couple of states if they want to have a real chance at winning the presidential election. But anyway, this is the data I uncovered. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about these 2 elections and any shifts on this map? Which are the biggest surprises, which are not surprising at all? Let me know down below. And on your way out, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.